Jake looked around the throne room one final time, taking in the faces of his fellow humans who had sacrificed so much for this moment. Then he made his decision. "We go with option 3, he said firmly. "The truth needs to come out, and humanity needs to be recognized as an equal partner in galactic affairs." Rodriguez smiled and nodded approvingly. "I was hoping you'd say that, Captain." Admiral Corthine stepped forward. "Then we need to move quickly. I've already arranged for key military commanders to witness what happens next. They're waiting outside." "Witness?" "What?" Chancellor Thorne demanded, his voice rising with panic. "The truth," Admiral Corthane replied simply. The Admiral gestured toward the main entrance to the throne room, and Jake heard the sound of military boots on crystal floors. A dozen high-ranking Zalarian officers entered the chamber, their uniforms displaying the insignia of fleet commanders, ground force generals, and intelligence directors. These were the people who actually ran the Zalarian military machine. Emperor Forthak rose from his throne, his ancient face dark with anger. "Admiral, this is beyond insubordination. This is a coup." "No, Your Majesty," Admiral Corthane replied calmly. "This is accountability." Rodriguez stepped into the center of the room, his torn uniform still displaying the Marine Corps tattoo that had started this revelation. "Honorable commanders," he said, addressing the assembled officers in fluent Zalarian. "I am Sergeant First Class Danny Rodriguez, United States Marine Corps, Terra Sol System." The officers stirred at this announcement, but none seemed entirely surprised. Jake realized that rumors of the truth had probably been circulating in military circles for some time. "For 15 years, Rodriguez continued, I and my fellow humans have served the Zalarian Empire with honor and distinction. We have planned your victories, trained your elite forces, and protected your most sacred institutions." Captain Martinez stepped forward to stand beside Rodriguez. "I am Captain Sarah Martinez, United States Air Force. My tactical innovations led to the successful defense of the Korath system 3 years ago." Lieutenant Washington joined them. "I am Lieutenant Commander Kevin Washington, United States Navy. My intelligence analysis prevented the disastrous Vorthan campaign that could have cost the Empire 3 entire fleets." One by one, the other human guards removed their masks and stated their names, ranks, and significant contributions to Zalarian military success. The list was impressive and undeniable. Each revelation caused murmurs among the assembled officers. General Thex Vorian, the commander of Zalarian ground forces, spoke first. "Admiral Corthane, are you telling us that our most successful military operations have been planned by these humans?" "I'm telling you, General, that human military personnel have been the driving force behind every major Zalarian victory for the past decade. Their tactical thinking, their strategic innovations, their training methods, all of it has come from human military doctrine adapted to our needs." Fleet Commander Vel Corvain shook her head in amazement. "The Battle of Nexus, Prime, the defense of the core worlds, the Korthak offensive. All of them?" Rodriguez nodded. "All of them, Commander. Planned, executed, and led by human personnel serving under Zalarian colors." Dr. Grant stepped forward, her scientific training evident in her precise analysis. "Honorable officers, what you're seeing here is proof that humanity deserves recognition as a major galactic power. These soldiers have demonstrated human military capabilities under the most challenging circumstances possible." Chancellor Thorne was becoming increasingly desperate. "This means nothing. They were captured enemies forced to serve. Their successes belong to the Empire." Admiral Corthane's voice cut through the Chancellor's protests like a blade. "Chancellor, these human soldiers could have sabotaged our operations at any time. They could have fed us false intelligence or led us into disasters. Instead, they served with honor because they understood that their actions would ultimately be judged by their own people." Rodriguez looked directly at Jake. "Captain, we never forgot that we were representing humanity, even when we wore alien uniforms. Every victory we won, every life we saved, every tactical innovation we developed, it was all done to show the galaxy what humans are capable of." The weight of their sacrifice hit Jake like a physical blow. These soldiers had spent 15 years building humanity's reputation while the rest of the human race remained unaware of their existence. General Vorian addressed his fellow officers. I have personally witnessed the effectiveness of human-trained units, the discipline, the tactical flexibility, the ability to adapt under pressure. It exceeds anything our traditional training methods have produced. And the intelligence they've provided, added Intelligence Director Kex Thalen, has been consistently accurate and strategically valuable. They've prevented more disasters than they've caused victories. Fleet Commander Corvain nodded slowly. If what we're hearing is true, then the Empire owes these humans a debt that can never be fully repaid. Emperor Vorthak seemed to age before their eyes as the full implications of the revelation sank in. The foundation of his empire's superiority complex was crumbling, and everyone in the room could see it. What do you propose? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake stepped forward, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Your Majesty, humanity proposes a new treaty between our peoples. Not the subordination agreement you offered before, but a genuine alliance between equals. Admiral Corthane nodded approvingly. The military faction supports this proposal. An alliance with humanity would benefit both our peoples far more than the current arrangement. And what of them? Emperor Vorthak gestured toward the human guards. What happens to those who have served the Empire? Rodriguez spoke for his fellow soldiers. Your Majesty, some of us would like to return to Earth to reunite with families we haven't seen in 15 years. Others have built lives here and would prefer to remain as official liaisons and military advisors. I choose to stay, Rodriguez continued. My family thinks I'm dead, and I found purpose here helping to build bridges between our peoples. But I want to do it as a human representative, not as captured property. Captain Martinez nodded. I'll return to Earth to brief our military, command on Zalarian capabilities, and establish formal cooperation protocols. Then I'll come back as an official military attaché. Lieutenant Washington smiled. I've got a daughter I've never met, and a wife who remarried. Going home is going to be complicated, but it's something I need to do. Jake looked around the room at the faces of two civilizations learning to see each other clearly for the first time. Your Majesty, what we're proposing is an end to pretense and the beginning of genuine cooperation. Humanity has proven its worth through the service of these soldiers. Now let's build something together that honors their sacrifice. Emperor Vorthak was silent for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Very well. Let it be recorded that the Empire recognizes humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs. Let it also be recorded that these human soldiers have served with honor and brought credit to both their species and their adopted service. 3 months later, Jake stood in the gardens of the Imperial Palace, sharing a drink with Rodriguez under the light of Zalara Prime's 3 moons. The new treaty had been signed, formal relations established, and the first exchange of military advisors was already underway. Any regrets? Jake asked. Rodriguez smiled, his marine dress uniform, replaced by a formal diplomatic suit that still somehow managed to look military. About staying? No. About the 15 years it took to get here? Sometimes. But Captain, we did something that's never been done before. We turned captivity into victory, and we did it while maintaining our honor. The tattoo that started it, all, Jake said, gesturing toward Rodriguez's arm. Semper Fidelis, Rodriguez replied. Always faithful, to the core, to humanity, and to the idea that warriors can find common ground even across the vastness of space. Above them, human and Zalarian ships moved together through the star-filled sky, no longer as captors and prisoners, but as allies bound by mutual respect and the understanding that true strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. The Marine Corps tattoo that had revealed the truth was now displayed proudly alongside the honors Rodriguez had earned in Zalarian service. 2 traditions, 2 cultures, 2 species finding a way to build something greater than either could achieve. Alone in the end, Jake thought, it had been worth every risk they had taken. Admiral Corthane moved to the center of the throne room, his presence commanding immediate attention from everyone present. Even Emperor Vorthak seemed diminished by the Admiral's authority, the old ruler shrinking back into his crystal throne. Captain, Morrison, the Admiral said, his voice carrying the weight of command. What I'm about to tell you must remain between us until we can implement proper protocols. There are forces within the Empire that would use this information to start a war, if they thought it would serve their purposes. Jake nodded, understanding the delicate nature of the situation. Around the room, the human guards remained at attention, but he could see the tension in their postures. These were soldiers caught between their duty to survive and their loyalty to home. The truth is, Admiral Corthane continued, the Zellarian Empire has become dependent on human military expertise. Not just the personnel you see here, but the tactical innovations, the training methods, the strategic thinking that humans have brought to our forces. Rodriguez stepped forward slightly. Captain, the Admiral has been protecting us for the past 5 years. He's the one who made sure we were assigned to positions where we could be most effective while avoiding suspicion from the civilian government. Protecting you? Dr. Grant asked. Why would you risk your career for captured enemy personnel? Admiral Corthane's expression grew thoughtful. Because they stopped being enemies the moment they chose to serve with honor instead of dying in defiance. And because I've seen what human soldiers can accomplish when they're properly motivated and equipped. Lieutenant Washington spoke up. The Admiral has family members serving in units that we've trained. He's seen the difference our methods make in terms of casualties and mission success. More than that, Admiral Corthane said, I've come to believe that the Empire's traditional approach to other species is fundamentally flawed. We've spent 10,000 years conquering and dominating, but humanity is the first species we've encountered that becomes more effective under pressure, instead of less. Jake was beginning to understand the complexity of the choice they faced. This wasn't just about rescuing captured personnel. It was about fundamentally altering the relationship between two interstellar civilizations. What exactly are you proposing? Jake asked. Rodriguez and Admiral Corthane exchanged a look that spoke of long conversations and careful planning. We have 3 options, Rodriguez said. First, you could demand our immediate release and return to Earth with us. This would expose the network and probably result in a diplomatic crisis. Second, Admiral Corthane continued, we could maintain the status quo. The human personnel would continue serving in their current positions, but now with official knowledge and communication with Earth. This would preserve stability, but leave the fundamental problems unresolved. Captain Martinez stepped forward. Or third, we could use this moment to force a complete reevaluation of human-Zellarian relations. Expose the truth about where our military success really comes from, and demand recognition of humanity as an equal partner. Jake felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. Each option carried enormous risks and potential benefits. The wrong choice could mean war, while the right choice could secure humanity's place among the galactic powers. What do you want? Jake asked the assembled human personnel. You're the ones who have sacrificed 15 years of your lives for this moment. What do you think we should do? The captured soldiers exchanged glances, and Jake could see years of discussion and debate in those looks. These people had clearly thought about this moment many times. Lieutenant Washington spoke first. Captain, most of us have families back, on Earth who think we're dead. Children who grew up without fathers and mothers, spouses who remarried, parents who never got to say goodbye. The chance to go home is something we've dreamed about for 15 years. But, Captain Martinez added, we've also built lives here. Some of us have formed relationships with Zellarian colleagues who respect us as individuals. We've seen parts of this galaxy that no other humans have experienced. Going home means leaving all of that behind. Rodriguez nodded slowly. And there's the bigger picture to consider. If we leave now, the Zellarians will go back to their old ways of thinking about humanity. They'll convince themselves that our contributions were minimal, that they never really needed us. Whereas if we stay and force recognition of the truth, Admiral Corthane said, we could establish a foundation for genuine cooperation between our peoples that could last for centuries. Dr. Grant had been listening carefully to all of this. There's another factor to consider. If the truth about human military effectiveness becomes widely known, it could change how other galactic civilizations view humanity as well. We could go from being seen as newcomers to being recognized as a significant power. Emperor Vorthak, who had been silent during much of this exchange, finally spoke up. This entire conversation is treasonous. Admiral, you exceed your authority by even suggesting these options. The Empire's policies are set by the Imperial Council, not by military commanders. Admiral Corthane turned to face the Emperor with barely concealed contempt. Your Majesty, with respect, the Imperial Council's policies have been based on false information for 15 years. They've been taking credit for military successes achieved by human personnel while publicly denigrating human capabilities. The military serves the Empire, Chancellor Thorne said desperately. Not the other way around. These humans are property, nothing more. Rodriguez's voice was ice cold when he responded. Chancellor, I want you to understand something very clearly. We've spent 15 years learning everything there is to know about this empire. We know where your fleets are stationed, how your supply lines work, where your strategic weaknesses lie. We know which systems are restless under Imperial rule, Captain Martinez added. We know which military commanders question current policies and which civilian leaders are vulnerable to political pressure. We know, Lieutenant Washington finished, exactly how to bring this empire to its knees if we decide that's what humanity's interests require. The threat was delivered calmly, professionally, but its implications filled the throne room with tension. Jake realized that these captured soldiers had become far more than just intelligence assets. They had become a potential weapon that could reshape galactic politics. Admiral Corthane nodded approvingly. This is exactly why the military faction supports a new approach. We've seen what humans can accomplish as adversaries, and we'd much rather have them as allies. Jake looked around the room at all the faces watching him, human faces marked by years of hardship and sacrifice, alien faces showing everything from fear to respect to desperate calculation. The choice he made in the next few minutes would echo through history. I need to know something, Jake said finally. If we choose the third option, if we force this confrontation, are you prepared to face the consequences? This could mean war. It could mean that some of you never make it home. Rodriguez smiled, and Jake saw the Marine he had always been. Captain, we've been at war for 15 years. We've just been fighting it differently than anyone expected. But we're ready for whatever comes next. The room fell silent as Jake weighed the options, knowing that the next words he spoke would determine the fate of two civilizations. Rodriguez reached into a hidden pocket in his ornate uniform and pulled out what looked like a standard Zellarian datapad. But as he activated it, Jake could see that it had been modified with additional components that were definitely not Zellarian technology. This contains detailed information about every human currently serving in the Zellarian military, Rodriguez explained, his voice low and urgent. Names, locations, assignments, and current status. We've been maintaining this database for over a decade. Jake took the device carefully, noting the human modifications that had been seamlessly integrated into the alien technology. How did you manage to build this without detection? Captain Martinez answered with a slight smile. 15 years is a long time, Captain. We've learned to be very creative. The Zellarians see us as valuable property, but they don't really understand how human minds work. They never realized we were building our own communication network right under their noses. Lieutenant Washington stepped closer, his Navy training evident in his careful attention to security. We use a combination of modified equipment, coded, messages embedded in routine reports, and face-to-face meetings during official ceremonies and training exercises. The beauty of it, Rodriguez added, is that the Zellarians actually helped us build the network. They rotate human personnel between different assignments to prevent us from getting too comfortable in any one position. What they didn't realize is that every transfer was an opportunity to pass information and maintain contact. Dr. Grant was studying the datapad with fascination. This is incredible. You've essentially created a shadow organization within the Zellarian military structure. The intelligence value alone is beyond calculation. It's more than just intelligence, Captain Martinez said. We've been influencing Zellarian military policy for years. Every time they ask for our advice on tactics or strategy, we've been subtly steering them away from actions that would harm human interests. Jake felt a new respect for these captured soldiers. They had not simply survived their captivity, they had turned it into an opportunity to protect humanity from the inside. Can you give me some examples? Rodriguez nodded. 3 years ago, the Zalarians were planning a preemptive strike against the human colony on New Geneva. They were worried that human expansion was getting too close to their border systems. We convinced them that the military resources required would be better used against their traditional enemies, the Korthak Alliance. Last year, Lieutenant Washington continued, they wanted to establish monitoring stations in human space to keep track of our fleet movements. We suggested alternative locations that would give them the same strategic information without violating human sovereignty. And 6 months ago, Captain Martinez finished, they were considering a trade embargo against Earth to force humanity into a more subordinate position. We provided economic analysis showing that such an embargo would hurt Zalarian interests more than human ones. Jake was amazed by the scope of their operation. You've been protecting humanity for 15 years, and no one on Earth even knows you exist. That was always the plan, Rodriguez said simply. Survive, gather intelligence, and protect human interests whenever possible. We knew that someday there would be official contact, and we wanted to be ready. Dr. Grant looked up from the data. Pad. According to this, you have people in almost every major Zalarian military installation, fleet command, strategic planning, special operations, even intelligence services. We've been very careful about advancement, Captain Martinez explained. The Zalarians promote based on competence, and humans tend to be very competent soldiers. But we've made sure to keep a low profile, to avoid drawing too much attention to our influence. Emperor Vorthak, who had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm, finally spoke up. This is treason of the highest order. These humans have betrayed the trust of the Empire. Rodriguez turned to face the Emperor with cold eyes. Betrayed? Your Majesty, we were captured soldiers forced to serve or die. We never swore allegiance to your Empire. We never abandoned our real loyalty. We simply did what we had to do to survive and protect our people. Besides, Lieutenant Washington added with a slight smile, it's not like you've been entirely honest with us either. You've been using human military expertise to build your reputation while publicly claiming that humans are inferior. If we're talking about betrayal, maybe we should start there. Chancellor Thorne had been growing more agitated throughout this conversation. Enough. This changes nothing. These humans are still property of the Empire. Their network will be dismantled. Their co-conspirators will be identified and punished. Actually, came a new voice from the entrance to the throne room. I think you'll find that things have changed quite dramatically. Everyone turned to see a tall Zalarian in military uniform striding into the chamber. Jake recognized the insignia of a fleet admiral, one of the highest ranks in the Zalarian military hierarchy. But what surprised him was the respectful way the human guard straightened to attention as the admiral approached. Admiral Zex Korthane, Rodriguez said formally. Sir. The admiral nodded to Rodriguez and the other humans before turning to face Emperor Vorthak. Your Majesty, I believe, it's time for some honest conversation about the true source of our military success. Emperor Vorthak's face went pale. Admiral, what is the meaning of this intrusion? The meaning, Your Majesty, is that the military command has been aware of this situation for some time. We've known that our human personnel were maintaining contact with each other. We've known that they were influencing our strategic decisions, and we've allowed it to continue because the results have been beneficial to the Empire. Jake felt the political ground shifting beneath his feet. This was not just about captured humans anymore. This was about a fundamental reevaluation of the relationship between the Zalarian Empire and humanity. Admiral Korthane continued, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. Over the past 15 years, human military advisors have been responsible for our 3 greatest strategic victories. They've prevented at least 2 major military disasters through their tactical expertise. They've trained our special forces to a level of effectiveness we had never achieved before. That's impossible, Chancellor Thorne protested. Humans are a primitive species. They cannot possibly be superior to Zalarian military doctrine. The admiral's laugh was harsh. Chancellor, you've been so busy maintaining political fiction that you've ignored military reality. These humans fight with a creativity and determination that our traditional training methods cannot match. They think in ways that surprise our enemies and achieve victories that should have been impossible. Rodriguez stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, the human delegation needs to understand the full scope of the situation. There are Zalarian military officers who have been advocating for a more honest relationship with humanity. Exactly, Admiral Corthane confirmed. There is a significant faction within the military command that believes the Empire would benefit from treating humans as allies rather than subjects. We've seen firsthand what human soldiers can accomplish when properly motivated. Dr. Grant was taking notes rapidly. Admiral, are you saying that there's political support within the Zalarian Empire for changing the relationship with humanity? I'm saying, Dr. Grant, that the military recognizes reality even when the civilian leadership prefers comfortable lies. Human military personnel have earned our respect through their service and their results. It's time that respect was reflected in official policy. Jake realized that they were witnessing something unprecedented, a split within the Zalarian power structure that could completely change the balance of galactic politics. The captured humans had not just survived their ordeal, they had become the catalyst for a fundamental shift in how one of the galaxy's most powerful empires viewed humanity. What are you proposing, Admiral? Jake asked. Admiral Corthane smiled, and Jake caught a glimpse of the warrior beneath the political uniform. I'm proposing that we stop pretending, Captain Morrison. Your people have proven themselves in ways that cannot be ignored. It's time for a new kind of relationship between our peoples. Rodriguez gestured to the other unmasked humans around the throne room. Captain, what you're seeing here is just the tip of the iceberg. The Royal Guards are the most visible position we hold, but there are human personnel scattered throughout the entire Zalarian military structure. Jake tried to process this information while keeping his diplomatic composure, though inside he felt like his world had been turned upside down. How is that possible? These early missions were small exploration vessels with limited crew. It started small, Captain Martinez explained, her Air Force training evident in her clear, precise way of speaking. When the Zalarians first encountered human ships, they expected easy victories. Instead, they found themselves facing opponents who fought with tactics and determination they had never seen before. Lieutenant Washington nodded. The first captured crews were supposed to be executed as examples, but some of the Zalarian military commanders recognized talent when they saw it. They convinced the Emperor that human warriors could be useful, if properly controlled. Rodriguez's expression hardened. So they gave us a choice: die as enemies of the Empire, or live as servants. Most of us chose to live, hoping someday we could find a way home. Dr. Grant was taking notes on her tablet, her scientific mind working to understand the full scope of what they were learning. But how did you maintain your identities, your humanity? The Zalarians obviously thought they had broken you completely. Never. Broken, Rodriguez said firmly. Bent, maybe. Forced to adapt, but never broken. Around the room, the other revealed humans were nodding in agreement. Jake could see the steel in their eyes, the unbroken spirit that marked professional military personnel who had survived the impossible. Captain Martinez stepped forward. We developed a network, hidden communications, coded messages, secret meetings. We kept track of every human who was captured, where they were assigned, what information they had access to. We created our own underground culture, Lieutenant Washington added, shared memories of home, kept track of holidays and important dates, maintained our military traditions in secret. The tattoos were just one way we identified each other. Rodriguez pulled back his torn sleeve further, revealing more tattoos that Jake had not seen before. Along with the Marine Corps insignia were small symbols and dates, a calendar of important human events, names of fallen comrades, coordinates that probably marked the location of Earth. Every human in the Zalarian military has markings like these, Rodriguez explained, hidden under our uniforms, disguised as alien decorations incorporated into the equipment we carry. We never let them erase who we really are. Emperor Vorthak had remained silent during this exchange, but now he spoke with a voice full of cold anger. Enough of this sentiment. You are property of the Empire. Your feelings and memories are irrelevant. You serve because you are useful, nothing more. Property? Rodriguez's voice carried 15 years of suppressed rage. Your Majesty, with all due respect, property doesn't think. Property doesn't innovate. Property doesn't win battles against impossible odds. What you have are human soldiers who chose survival over martyrdom, but we never became your property. Jake was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he was hearing. You're telling me that the military might of the Zalarian Empire, their reputation as unstoppable warriors, is actually based on captured human personnel? Not entirely, Captain Martinez clarified. The Zalarians have good equipment and adequate training, but their tactical doctrine, their special operations capabilities, their elite units, yes, that's largely human innovation adapted to their needs. Dr. Grant looked up from her tablet. This explains so many inconsistencies in our intelligence. Reports. Zalarian military tactics seemed too advanced for their known technological development. Their strategies showed creativity that didn't match their rigid social structure. Lieutenant Washington smiled grimly. Because it wasn't their creativity. Every major Zalarian military victory in the past 15 years has had human fingerprints. On it, we planned the campaigns, developed the tactics, trained the troops. The scope of the deception was staggering. Jake realized that humanity had been negotiating with an empire that owed much of its power to captured human expertise, while the Zalarians claimed human inferiority. How many others know about this? Jake asked. Rodriguez considered the question, carefully. Within the military command structure, quite a few. They prefer not to think about it too clearly, but they know where their best ideas come from. The civilian leadership and the general population have no idea. And you've been gathering intelligence this entire time? For 15 years, Captain Martinez confirmed. We know their fleet dispositions, their defensive capabilities, their supply lines, their political weaknesses. We know which systems are loyal and which are restless. We know everything. Chancellor Thorne, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly found his voice. This is all very dramatic, but it changes nothing. These humans serve the Empire now. Their knowledge belongs to us. Their skills are ours to command. Rodriguez turned to face the Chancellor with an expression that made the alien step backward. Chancellor, you seem to misunderstand something fundamental. We serve because we choose to survive, but our loyalty, our real allegiance, that has never changed. Around the room, the other humans were nodding. Jake could see it in their faces. These were soldiers who had endured years of captivity without breaking, who had maintained their identity and their mission even when all hope seemed lost. What mission? Dr. Grant asked, as if reading Jake's thoughts. Lieutenant Washington answered. To survive, to gather intelligence, and to be ready when the time came to make contact with official human representatives. Today is that day. Jake felt the weight of command settling on his shoulders. These people had been waiting 15 years for this moment, maintaining their hope and their humanity in the heart of an alien empire. They were looking to him for leadership, for a way home, for justice. What do you need from us? He asked. Rodriguez smiled, and Jake saw the Marine NCO that he had always been, regardless of the alien uniform he wore. First, we need you to understand that this isn't just about rescue. This is about exposing the lie that the Zalarian Empire has built its reputation on. They've been using human expertise while claiming human inferiority. Second, Captain Martinez added, we need to coordinate our actions. There are over 200 of us scattered across the Empire. Any rescue attempt has to account for all of us, or the ones left behind will pay the price. And third, Lieutenant Washington finished, we need to decide whether we're going to use this information to get a better deal for humanity, or whether we're going to expose the truth and let the chips fall where they are. Jake looked around, the room at the faces of his fellow humans, then at the pale, frightened face of Emperor Vorthak. The balance of power had shifted dramatically in the space of a few minutes. The question now was what to do with that advantage. How much time do we have before they try to silence you? Jake asked. Rodriguez glanced at the other guards, many of whom were still wearing their masks but had moved into defensive positions. Not long. But Captain, you should know something else. We're not the only ones who've been waiting for this day. There are Zalarian military officers who respect us, who know the truth about where their victories really come from. Not everyone in this empire is happy with the way things are. The throne room fell into absolute silence. Jake stood frozen, his hand still gripping the torn fabric of the guard's uniform, staring at the impossible tattoo on the alien's arm. The eagle, globe, and anchor seemed to burn into his vision, along with those English words that should not exist in this place. Dr. Grant had stopped struggling in the guard's grip, her scientific mind racing to understand what she was seeing. Commander Bennett's eyes went wide as he recognized the significance of the Marine Corps insignia. Lieutenant Cooper's mouth fell open in shock. The guard who had spoken slowly reached up with his free hand and touched the ornate mask that covered his face. Around the room, the other royal guards had gone completely still, their attention focused on this unprecedented moment. Even Emperor Vorthak leaned forward on his crystal throne, his ancient eyes narrowing with confusion. "What did you say?" Chancellor Thorne demanded, his voice sharp with anger. "Guards do not speak during ceremonies. This is a violation of protocol." The guard ignored the Chancellor completely. His masked face was turned toward Jake, and despite not being able to see his features, Jake could sense the intensity of his gaze. The man's fingers hesitated for just a moment on the edge of his mask, as if he was making a decision that would change everything. "Danny Rodriguez," the guard said quietly, his Boston accent becoming clearer now that he was not trying to hide. "Story Sergeant First Class, United States Marine Corps. Serial number 2847-9156-4472. Reported missing in action 15 years ago during Deep Space Patrol Mission Bravo 7. The mask came away slowly, revealing a weathered human face. The man was perhaps 40 years old, with brown hair cut in military style and hazel eyes that held years of pain and determination. His skin had the pale tinge that came from years spent on alien worlds, but his features were unmistakably human. Jake felt the air leave his lungs. That's impossible. The Bravo 7 mission was lost with all hands. No survivors were ever found. Rodriguez smiled grimly, still holding Dr. Grant, but no longer gripping her arm tightly. "Not lost, Captain. Captured, along with 37 other Marines and Navy personnel from 3 different patrol missions over the past 15 years. Emperor Vorthak shot to his feet, his face dark with rage. "What is the meaning of this? Rodriguez, explain yourself immediately." The Marine looked up at the Emperor with eyes that held no fear, only a lifetime of military discipline and controlled anger. "With respect, Your Majesty, I think it's time for some truth. These people deserve to know what really happened to their missing personnel." Around the room, other royal guards were beginning to shift uncomfortably. Jake noticed that several of them had positioned themselves differently, no longer facing the human delegation, but rather creating a protective formation around Rodriguez. It was a subtle change, but one that spoke of military coordination and shared purpose. Chancellor Thorne's voice was shrill with panic. "This is treason. Guards, arrest this impostor immediately." None of the other royal guards moved. Instead, Jake heard another voice speak up from across the room. "Impostor?" The voice was female with a slight southern drawl. "Danny Rodriguez is more Marine than you'll ever know, you pompous alien bureaucrat." Another guard removed her mask, revealing a woman in her 30s with short blonde hair and blue eyes. "Captain Sarah Martinez, United States Air Force, shot. Down during reconnaissance mission Delta 4 12 years ago." A third guard pulled off his mask, showing a black man with intelligent dark eyes. "Lieutenant Commander Kevin Washington, United States Navy. Captured during First Contact Mission Alpha 1 14 years ago." One by one, guards around the room began removing their masks. Each revealed a human face, each gave a name and rank and service branch. The ornate throne room filled with American accents from different regions, voices that had been silent for years finally speaking their true names. Jake's mind reeled as he tried to process what he was seeing. These were not aliens wearing beautiful uniforms and serving a foreign empire. These were human military personnel, his own people who had been missing and presumed dead for years. Dr. Grant had tears in her eyes as she looked around the room. "How many?" she whispered. Rodriguez answered without hesitation. 214 human military personnel currently serving in various capacities throughout the Zalarian Empire, all captured during early exploration missions when humanity was still new to interstellar travel. Emperor Vorthak's face had gone from rage to something approaching panic. The careful facade of Zalarian superiority was crumbling before his eyes. "This is impossible. The royal guards are selected from birth, trained from childhood. They are the finest warriors in the galaxy." "No," Rodriguez said firmly, his marine training evident in every word. "We are the finest warriors in the galaxy, human warriors, captured and impressed into your service because you recognized something you could never admit publicly, that human military personnel are superior to anything your empire could produce." The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. The Zalarians had been capturing human military personnel and using them as their elite forces while publicly claiming that humans were inferior. It was the ultimate hypocrisy, and it explained so much about what he had observed over the past few days. Commander Bennett found his voice first. "The way you move, the way you carry yourselves. I knew something was familiar about your tactics and formations. You've been using human military doctrine this entire time." Captain Martinez nodded grimly. "Adapted for Zalarian equipment and modified for alien physiology. But yes, everything you've seen from the Royal Guards, our discipline, our effectiveness, our tactical awareness, it all comes from human military training." Chancellor Thorne was backing toward the exits, his face pale with terror. "This changes nothing. They are property of the Empire now. They serve at the pleasure of the Emperor." Rodriguez's expression darkened. "Property? We volunteered to serve rather than be executed, but we never forgot who we really are. Every single day for 15 years, we've remembered our real names, our real homes, our real allegiance." Jake looked around the room at the faces of his fellow humans. Some were young, captured early in their careers. Others were older, veterans who had been missing for over a decade. All of them had the lean, hard look of professional soldiers who had survived impossible circumstances. "Why now?" Jake asked. "Why reveal yourselves today?" Rodriguez smiled, and for the first time since entering the palace, Jake saw genuine warmth in the expression. "Because today was the first time we've seen an official human delegation. The first time we've had a chance to make contact with home. We've been waiting 15 years for this moment, Captain Morrison." Lieutenant Washington stepped forward, his Navy training evident in his precise movements. "We've gathered intelligence on Zalarian military capabilities, political structures, and strategic weaknesses. We know everything about this empire, its strengths, its fears, its secrets." Dr. Grant was looking around the room with wonder and growing understanding. "The Zalarians have been lying about everything. Their military superiority, their advanced tactics, their elite forces. It's all been human expertise dressed up in alien uniforms." Emperor Vorthak seemed to shrink before their eyes, the ancient ruler suddenly looking every one of his many years. The foundation of his empire's power was crumbling, and everyone in the room could see it. Rodriguez looked directly at Jake, Marine to Captain, human to human. "The question now, sir, is what do we do about it?" 3 days of negotiations had produced nothing but frustration and thinly veiled insults. Jake sat in the ornate conference room, staring at the document that Chancellor Thorne had just placed before him. The so-called trade agreement was worse than anything he could have imagined. "These terms are completely unacceptable," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. Dr. Grant was reading over his shoulder, her face growing paler with each line. Commander Bennett was already shaking, his head in disgust. The document demanded that humanity pay annual tribute to the Zalarian Empire in exchange for the privilege of trading with them. Human ships would be restricted to specific routes and could not travel without Zalarian escorts. Any human colonies would be subject to Zalarian law, and Earth itself would be required to accept Zellarian governors to oversee human activities. Chancellor, Thorne smiled coldly. These are generous terms for such a primitive species. The Empire is offering you protection and guidance. Many civilizations would consider themselves fortunate to receive such an offer. This is not a trade agreement, Commander Bennett said, his voice hard with anger. This is slavery with extra steps. You want us to become your vassals, nothing more. The royal guards around the room shifted slightly, the first movement Jake had seen from them in days. Their masked faces remained impassive, but something in their posture suggested increased alertness. Emperor Vorthak leaned back on his crystal throne, watching the exchange with what might have been amusement. Slavery? Chancellor Thorne's voice dripped with false concern. Such harsh words from species that only recently abolished the practice among their own kind. We offer structure, guidance, the wisdom of 10 millennia of civilization. Surely, that is worth more than the illusion of independence. Dr. Grant set down the document carefully. Your Majesty, these terms would make it impossible for humanity to grow or develop. We would become completely dependent on the Empire for everything. That is not partnership, it is domination. Precisely, the Emperor said, his ancient eyes gleaming. Domination by a superior civilization over an inferior one. This is the natural order of the galaxy. The strong guide the weak, the old teach the young. You should be grateful that we do not simply take what we want by force. Jake felt something snap inside him. The constant insults, the casual dismissal of human achievements, the arrogant assumption that might made right. It was too much. He stood up, his chair scraping against the crystal floor. We are not inferior, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Humanity may be young, but we have earned our place among the stars through courage, determination, and sacrifice. We have faced the unknown and pushed forward when others might have turned back. We have built a civilization based on the idea that all beings deserve freedom and dignity, not just the strong. The silence that followed was deafening. Several Zellarian nobles gasped at Jake's boldness. The royal guards around the room took a step forward, their hands moving toward the ceremonial weapons at their sides. But Jake was beyond caring about diplomatic protocol now. You want to know what humanity offers? Jake continued, his voice growing stronger. We offer innovation born from necessity, courage born from adversity, and hope born from the belief that tomorrow can be better than today. We may not have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, but we have never given up, never surrendered, never accepted that our current situation is the best we can achieve. Emperor Vorthak's face darkened with anger. Enough. You forget yourself, human. You stand in the heart of the Empire, surrounded by our finest warriors, completely at our mercy. Your little speech changes nothing. You will accept our terms or face the consequences. The royal guards moved closer, forming a tighter circle around the human delegation. Their ceremonial weapons no longer looked quite so ceremonial. Jake could see the tension in their movements, the readiness for violence that lurked beneath their ornate uniforms. Lieutenant Cooper was trembling. Whether from fear or anger, Jake could not tell. Dr. Grant had gone very pale, her scientific mind, no doubt, calculating their chances of survival if this situation turned violent. Commander Bennett had positioned himself slightly in front of the other diplomats, his military training taking over. What consequences? Jake asked, his voice steady despite the danger they were in. You will attack an official diplomatic mission? Murder unarmed ambassadors? That will certainly demonstrate the superior civilization you claim to represent. Chancellor Thorne laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Murder? No, Captain Morrison. We would simply explain that the human delegation was killed in an unfortunate accident. Perhaps a malfunction in their ship's life support systems. These things happen to primitive technology. The threat was clear and unmistakable. Jake looked around the circle of royal guards, trying to read their body language through their ornate uniforms. They were professionals. He could see that much. They would follow orders without question, even orders to kill defenseless diplomats. Dr. Grant was pulled roughly to her feet by one of the guards. The alien's grip on her arm was tight enough to leave bruises, and Jake saw her wince in pain. "Do not touch her," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The guard holding Dr. Grant tilted his masked head slightly, as if considering Jake's words. Then he deliberately tightened his grip, making Dr. Grant gasp. It was a calculated insult, designed to show just how powerless the humans really were. Commander Bennett took a step forward, but two more guards blocked his path, their weapons now openly drawn. The beautiful throne room had become a trap, and Jake realized that they might never leave this place alive. "You see?" Emperor Vorthak said, his voice filled with satisfaction. "This is reality, Captain Morrison. We have the power, you do not. We decide who lives and who dies, who prospers and who suffers. Your speeches about courage and determination are meaningless in the face of superior force." The guard holding Dr. Grant shook her slightly, and Jake felt his control snap completely. Years of military training kicked in, overriding his diplomatic instincts. He lunged forward, grabbing at the guard's ornate uniform, trying to pull him away from Dr. Grant. His hands caught the elaborate chest piece of the guard's armor, and as they struggled, Jake heard the sound of tearing fabric. The ornate sash across the guard's chest ripped away, taking part of the underlying uniform with it. Jake was pulling his arm back for another grab when he saw something that made him freeze completely. There, exposed on the guard's forearm where the torn uniform had pulled away, was a tattoo that made Jake's blood run cold. It was unmistakably human in design. The eagle, globe, and anchor of the United States Marine Corps stood out clearly against alien skin, along with the motto Semper Fidelis in clear English letters. Below that, in smaller text, were the words, Camp Pendleton 2157. Jake stared at the tattoo, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. A human military tattoo on a Zalarian royal guard. It was impossible, but there it was, as clear as daylight. The guard with the exposed tattoo slowly raised his free hand, and Jake heard him speak for the first time since their arrival. The voice was quiet, careful, but unmistakably human. "Easy there, Captain," the guard said, his words carrying just a hint of a Boston accent. "We need to talk." The throne room of the Imperial Palace was the largest space Jake had ever been inside. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds seemed to form near the top, and the walls were covered with murals that told the story of Zalarian conquests across the galaxy. Golden light filtered down from crystal windows, making everything glow like a dream. Emperor Kale Vorthak sat on a throne made from a single massive blue crystal, wearing robes that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. He was ancient, even by Zalarian standards, and his violet eyes held the weight of centuries. Around the throne, dozens of royal guards stood like statues, their ornate masks reflecting the golden light. "So," the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, "these are the humans I have heard so much about. You are smaller than I expected." Jake kept his face neutral, though he felt his team's discomfort. Dr. Grant had warned them that the Zalarians often opened negotiations with casual insults, testing their opponent's patience and self-control. It was a power game, designed to establish dominance from the first moment. "Your Majesty," Jake replied, bowing deeply, "we are grateful for this audience. Humanity seeks friendship with the great Zalarian Empire and hopes to establish trade that benefits both our peoples." Chancellor Thorne, standing beside the throne, laughed softly. "Friendship? Trade? You have been spacefaring for what? 2 centuries? The Empire has ruled the stars for 10,000 years. What could you possibly offer us that we do not already possess?" Commander Bennett's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Dr. Grant stepped forward slightly. "Your Majesty, humanity may be young, but we have developed unique technologies and perspectives that could complement the Empire's vast knowledge. We believe that diversity of thought leads to innovation." The Emperor studied her with those ancient eyes. Diversity of thought. An interesting concept from a species that still fights wars over the color of their skin and the gods they worship. "Tell me, Dr. Grant, what makes you think you understand the complexities of galactic civilization?" The insult was delivered so smoothly that it took a moment for its full impact to register. Jake saw Dr. Grant's face flush slightly, but she maintained her composure. Around the throne room, the royal guards remained perfectly still, like deadly statues watching everything unfold. Lieutenant Cooper shifted nervously beside Jake. This was his first major diplomatic mission, and the young officer was clearly struggling with the Zolarian's casual contempt. Jake made a mental note to keep an eye on him. The negotiations continued for hours, with the Zolarians questioning every human claim and dismissing their achievements as lucky accidents or copied technology. They spoke about humanity the way Jake might discuss a clever pet that had learned a new trick. The royal guards never moved, never spoke, their masked faces revealing nothing. When the formal session ended, the humans were escorted to guest quarters that were beautiful, but felt more like a prison. The walls were made of the same glowing crystal as the throne, and the furniture was elegant but clearly designed for Zolarian proportions. Everything was slightly too large, another subtle reminder of their status as inferiors. That evening, they were invited to a formal dinner in the Crystal Hall, another magnificent room filled with Zolarian nobility. The guests wore elaborate robes and jewelry that probably cost more than most human starships. They spoke in small groups, their voices creating a gentle hum that filled the space. Jake and his team were seated at a table that was clearly marked as the least important. In the room, the royal guard stood around the edges of the hall, their presence both protective and intimidating. Servers moved between the tables, offering foods that looked beautiful, but smelled strange to human noses. Dr. Grant was trying to identify the various dishes when Lieutenant Cooper reached for what looked like wine. The crystal glass was delicate, designed for Zolarian hands, and as Cooper lifted it, the stem snapped. Dark purple liquid splashed across the white tablecloth and onto the uniform of a nearby royal guard. The entire hall fell silent. The royal guard stood perfectly still as the wine dripped from his ornate chest piece onto the crystal floor. Every Zolarian in the room was staring, their violet eyes wide with shock. The silence stretched on, becoming more uncomfortable with each passing second. Chancellor Thorne rose from his seat at the high table, his face dark with anger. This is intolerable. The human has defiled a royal guard with his clumsiness. Such disrespect cannot be overlooked. Jake stood quickly, his heart racing. Chancellor, it was an accident. Lieutenant Cooper meant no disrespect. We will of course pay for any cleaning or replacement of the uniform. Pay? Thorne's voice was ice cold. You think this is about money? The royal guards are sacred protectors of the imperial family. To stain their uniforms is to insult the empire itself. Perhaps this demonstrates exactly why your species is unfit for civilized society. The stained royal guard had not moved a muscle during this exchange. He stood like a statue, wine still dripping from his armor, his masked face revealing nothing. The other guards around the room remained equally motionless, but Jake sensed a tension in their posture that had not been there before. Dr. Grant tried to salvage the situation. Your Majesty, surely the sacred nature of the royal guards comes from their honor and service, not from the cleanliness of their uniforms. The guard himself shows perfect discipline by maintaining his post despite the accident. Emperor Vorthak leaned forward on his crystal throne. You would lecture us on the nature of honor, human. Your species has existed in space for less time than some of our guards have served the throne. You know nothing of duty, nothing of sacrifice, nothing of true service. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. Everything depended on these negotiations, and losing his temper now would doom any chance of success. But the casual dismissal of human achievements and character was becoming harder to bear with each passing hour. Commander Bennett spoke for the first time that evening. Your Majesty, we may be young as a civilization, but humans understand duty and sacrifice. Our military personnel serve with honor, often far from home, often in dangerous situations. We may not have 10,000 years of history, but we have heart. The Emperor's laugh was like breaking glass. Heart? Emotion is weakness, Commander. Discipline is strength. Order is power. Look at your young lieutenant there, trembling like a leaf because he spilled some wine. Is this the quality of soldier humanity produces? Lieutenant Cooper's face was red with embarrassment and anger. Jake could see the young man struggling with the urge to defend himself and his species. The Royal Guards continued to watch silently, their presence a constant reminder of Zalarian military might. The dinner continued, but the mood was ruined. Zalarian nobles whispered among themselves, casting disapproving glances at the human table. The wine-stained Royal Guard remained at his post, motionless and professional. But Jake found himself watching the guard more closely than before. There was something about the way the guard carried himself that seemed familiar, though Jake could not put his finger on what it was. The perfect military bearing, the way he distributed his weight, the subtle positioning that kept his hands free for quick action. It reminded Jake of something, but the ornate mask and elaborate uniform made it impossible to see the being beneath. The evening wore on. Jake realized that this mission was going to be far more difficult than anyone had anticipated. The Zalarians were not just arrogant, they were convinced of their absolute superiority. They saw humans as amusing curiosities at best, potential threats at worst. But as he watched the Royal Guards maintaining their perfect discipline despite the chaos around them, Jake began to wonder if there might be more to this situation than met the eye. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the massive blue and silver planet grow larger through the view screen. Zalara Prime looked beautiful from space, with its swirling clouds and 3 silver moons hanging like jewels in the darkness. This was humanity's first real chance to make friends with one of the galaxy's most powerful empires, and Jake felt the weight of that responsibility on his shoulders. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Grant was studying her tablet, reviewing everything she knew about Zalarian culture. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met when it came to understanding alien species, and he trusted her completely. Commander Alex Bennett stood nearby, his arms crossed as he watched the planet below. Alex was Jake's best friend, and second in command, a man who had saved Jake's life more times than either of them could count. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," reported Lieutenant Ryan Cooper from his position at the communications station. Ryan was young, maybe 25, and this was his first major diplomatic mission. Jake could see the excitement and nervousness in the young man's eyes. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The view screen changed to show a tall, elegant alien with pale blue skin and silver hair. The Zalarian wore a magnificent purple robe with gold trim, and his eyes were a striking violet color. When he spoke, his voice was smooth but cold. "Human Vessel Liberty, I am Chancellor Vex Thorn of the Zalarian Empire. You are cleared to land at Imperial Spaceport 7. You will be met by a Royal Guard escort and brought directly to the Imperial Palace. Do not deviate from your assigned flight path." The transmission ended before Jake could respond. Alex raised an eyebrow. "Friendly bunch," he muttered. Dr. Grant looked up from her tablet. "Remember, the Zalarians have very strict protocols. Everything they do is about showing power and maintaining order. The Royal Guards are their most elite soldiers, chosen from birth and trained to protect the Imperial family. They never speak during ceremonies and never remove their masks in public." Jake nodded. He had read the same reports, but hearing it from Lisa made it feel more real. The Zalarians were an old empire, thousands of years older than human civilization. They controlled dozens of star systems and had technology that made human ships look like toys. But they also had something humanity needed: rare minerals that could power faster than light engines and defensive shields. The Liberty descended through Zalara Prime's atmosphere, passing over cities that looked like works of art. Tall spires reached toward the sky, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to float in the air. Gardens and parks were everywhere, showing the Zalarians' love of beauty and order. Jake had to admit it was impressive. Imperial Spaceport 7 was bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. The landing platform was made of some kind of white stone that seemed to glow in the sunlight. As soon as the Liberty touched down, Jake could see their escort waiting. 12 figures stood in perfect formation near the landing platform. They wore elaborate uniforms of deep purple and gold, with ornate armor that looked more ceremonial than practical. Their faces were hidden behind beautiful masks that matched their uniforms, each one carved with intricate designs. These were the royal guards that Dr. Grant had told them about. "Well, here we go," Jake said, straightening his dress uniform. The human delegation consisted of Jake, Dr. Grant, Commander Bennett, Lieutenant Cooper, and 3 other diplomats. They had practiced this moment dozens of times during the journey, but Jake still felt nervous. The airlock opened, and Jake stepped out first, followed by his team. The air on Zalara Prime was clean and sweet, with a hint of something like vanilla. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making Jake feel like he could jump higher than normal. The royal guards did not move or speak as the humans approached. Their leader, identifiable only by slightly more elaborate decorations on his armor, stepped forward and bowed slightly. It was a precise, measured gesture that conveyed respect without showing weakness. "Welcome to Zalara Prime," came a voice from behind the guards. Chancellor Thorne approached, flanked by 2 more officials in expensive-looking robes. Up close, the Chancellor was even more imposing. He was tall, perhaps 7 feet, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. "Thank you for receiving us, Chancellor," Jake replied, bowing in the manner Dr. Grant had taught him. "I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing the United Earth Government. We are honored to be here." The Chancellor's violet eyes studied Jake for a moment, and Jake had the uncomfortable feeling that he was being weighed and found wanting. Indeed. It is curious that a species so young would presume to request an audience with the Empire. But the Emperor has graciously agreed to hear your petition. Jake felt a flash of anger at the casual insult, but he kept his expression neutral. Beside him, he could sense Alex tensing, but his friend remained silent. This was exactly what they had expected based on the intelligence reports. The royal guards formed a perfect escort formation around the human delegation as they walked toward a series of elegant vehicles. The guards moved like they were dancing, each step precise and coordinated with the others. Their masks revealed nothing, and they made no sound except for the soft whisper of their boots on the stone. The vehicles were beautiful, looking more like works of art than transportation. They hovered a few inches off the ground and moved silently through the city streets. Jake watched the scenery pass by, noting the perfect gardens, the clean streets, and the way every Zalarian they saw stopped and bowed when they recognized the Royal Guard escort. Dr. Grant leaned close to Jake and whispered, "Notice how the guards position themselves. They're not just for show. Each one has clear sight lines and fields of fire. These are real soldiers, not just ceremonial troops." Jake nodded, having noticed the same thing. Despite their beautiful uniforms and ornate masks, there was something deadly about the way the royal guards carried themselves. They moved like predators, always alert, always ready. The imperial palace rose before them like a mountain made of crystal and gold. Towers reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to defy gravity. Gardens cascaded down the sides of the structure in impossible waterfalls of flowers and green plants. It was the most beautiful building Jake had ever seen, and also the most intimidating. As their vehicles came to a stop, Jake took a deep breath. This was where everything would be decided. Either humanity would gain a powerful ally and access to the resources they desperately needed, or they would return to Earth empty-handed, possibly with the Zalarian Empire as an enemy. The Royal Guards stepped out first, forming their escort formation again. Jake and his team followed, walking up the steps toward the massive doors of the Imperial Palace. Each step took them further from the familiar world of humanity and deeper into the heart of an alien empire that saw them as little more than clever animals.